can dive in. Yeah, so most of you have probably heard of Melissa, maybe read Escaping the Build Trap, maybe read Product Operations book, which was out already more than a year ago, right? 1 year and a half, almost. Yeah, long time. Seems like yesterday. But yeah, so today we want to do this intimate session just to have an unfiltered conversation with Melissa. And yeah, Melissa, thank you so much for joining and for offering your time to chat with us today. So to get it started, could you do just a quick intro about your background and what you're up to, and also how you got to write this book about product operations, and maybe hint us a little bit in what it is and what are the main things that people should think about when they think about product operations.
Sure. Hello, I'm Melissa. Let's see, I've been helping organizations and product managers learn great product management for the last, oh God, what is it? It's 2025. Probably close to 10 years now, a little bit longer. And when I've done a couple different things through Product Institute, we do a lot of online training, and we usually support large enterprises that are going through big transformations and learning to stand up product organizations at scale. So that means, not a couple product managers at a startup. So in 2017, I led a big transformation at a company called Athena Health that had 350 product managers there. And that's kind of where I first was getting introduced to product operations. We trained everybody. It was like a full-time consulting thing where I came in and was there every day. And once we trained everybody, though, it was like, hey, how do we actually make this work in practice, right? We got some of the processes down, we put like some of the templates out there, but then it became like, how does the leadership get the information they need to actually make decisions, right? How do we deploy strategy throughout the organization so that we know what the portfolio strategy is? How do we get the data actually out of the systems to do that? What does it mean to create the different memos for strategy? Like, what templates should we use for that? How do we actually do that? How do we get the information in there? We had a lot of things around accessing customers and making sure that that was also good. We were working with a lot of hospitals and nurses and doctors, and we were finding out that like all 300 of our product managers were going to one hospital and asking them for feedback. And they were getting a little sick of that. And we said, we've got to figure out how to get more distribution. So we looked at how to streamline customer access, how to collect feedback and actually make it so that people could read other people's customer research, collect all those different things. And that is really where the basis of product operations came out. So we ended up standing up a product operations team there and really systematically thought through like, what are the tools and the services that we could provide to the product management team to make this operate better? So it was kind of like product managers for product managers. And we did a lot of standing up internal tools. We integrated tools that we would use in there. We had people on the data side who would go in and help create dashboards, get the information out of systems, because we did not have good data links at the time. So we put that out into place, and it started being utilized a lot. And that was like my first kind of introduction to it. And we said, and for that, that was my first like moment where I was like, it's more than just skilled people making product management run well. It's also the infrastructure that we build around it. We talk a lot about that on the developer side too. Like developers have DevOps, they have tools for all this stuff, but we don't really talk about what does it mean to operate a product management organization. After that, I ran a consultancy for that worked with Insight Venture Partners pretty closely, and we would do that for scale-up stages too. And in that case, we'd come in and we'd help try to get a lot of the information out, make repeatable dashboards, make repeatable systems like in Power BI and stuff that pulled the data in so that we could actually see and set strategy faster. That's usually what a scale-up needs to do quickly. And then we would go back in and try to figure out what do they need here to start getting their operations up so they could scale it from the beginning. So I've done it a lot from turnaround, like take a company that's already at scale and how do we implement this, but then also how do we build it for scale as we've gone in first. And then I've stepped away from super heavy consulting on that, but I'm still kind of advising companies on how to do that we do a lot of stuff teaching through workshops, and Denise actually goes in now and is implementing a lot of those things, working with product ops leaders in a lot of places.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. And yeah, for context, Denise is your co-author also on the product operations book. To get started and again invite everyone to ask questions, you can just drop them in the chat or just raise your hand and I'll give you the virtual mic. But yeah, you mentioned that you've done these two things. So already with established companies and big companies, how do you get this better, and also how to set it up when the company is growing? At what stage do you think dedicated product operations role is needed and makes sense? I think lots of time, like in early stage in startups and so on, it's generally the product managers doing that kind of work, right?
Yeah,
When do you think it's important to take the step?
Yeah, it's definitely not for early stage startups. Let me say it's not, don't do it if you're really tiny. It starts to become really important when you start to scale. And the idea here is we look for when do a couple of these signs go? It's like it's hard to get the information out to track if we're actually measuring success. It's hard to keep track of what everybody's kind of working on and make sure that we're all aligned in that case, right? It's hard to onboard people and make sure that they know consistently like how we work. Those types of signals right there are telling us that like we should start to look at this role. Typically, we say like around 10 product managers, probably a little bit more, is like that influx point where some of those things start to happen. Now, some teams can get by longer not having that if they put the tools in, early. They've got like a strong data team, let's say, that is building stuff for product managers. Some of those things can go a little bit longer. But when you start feeling those pain points of like, hey, we've got like a big team now, and it feels like there's a lot of disconnect around what we're doing and how we get the information, that's like a good signal that we need to start building stuff for our team to actually work a little more efficiently and start to think about what we can do here. And the other part too is a good signal on this too is that your product manager is getting burnt out because they're basically like doing everything. They feel like they're doing everything but their jobs, right? So if people were like creating templates off the side of their desk, being like, oh, I just like, we had nothing to do this, so I made this template. And somebody else is like, well, I made that template over there. I've got a roadmap in this format. I got a roadmap in this format. And it just feels like every time we need to do something, we have to recreate the wheel. That's a very strong signal that product ops is needed, or somebody needs to like, and it could start with one person very easily, like come in, just take the reins on that and say, I'm going to put this into place. And it usually starts as a fractional part of somebody's role. Like that's almost always how everybody gets into product ops. It's like, I'm spending half my time on it and maybe half of it on some other product management stuff, but then it usually graduates into a full-time role after.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Norma, you have a question? Want to go ahead?
Yes. Hello. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
Okay, let me do my question. And it's in line with what you are talking about already. So I really like this, what you say, where is the inflection point? My question here will be, what if I am the only person in the organization who sees the needs or has a clue that this is the way to go? So there comes, how do I influence perhaps my managers or my peers? And the other question is, who needs to start doing this, setting up the basis for this operation? Because I did imagine that at the beginning you have to do a lot of manual work until you have the the buy-in to get investing in this infrastructure. So if you can give your advice on that.
So the way that you get buy-in the fastest is by solving the problems of the leaders. So for instance, the way that we stood that up was our like CPO at Athena Health had like absolutely no insights into how to reconcile the whole portfolio to say like, here's the stuff that we're going to deliver. And the CEO was like, I cannot tell what we're doing, like when it comes to tech, like it's just like this big opaque stuff. And the leader, like the CPO was like, I have to do so much work to roll all this stuff up into a presentation to tell the CEO what we could actually expect, right? Like there was so much manual effort in there. And that's where we started. We said like, well, let's diagnose why that's happening. And one was like, we didn't have a road mapping tool that actually pulled stuff together. The second part of it was that a lot of the product managers were writing their initiatives and like the scope of what they're doing at all different levels. So we had like some people writing like user stories for what would be like an epic or an initiative. And I'm like, that's not like the right scope, right? Like nobody knows what you're doing. There was no outcomes associated with it. So we said, hey, what if we could get you a view of how all the work that we're doing actually rolls up to what we're actually going to achieve? And they were like, yeah, that would be amazing. We're like, okay, I need this much time, this much budget to go back in and do that. Like we need this type of tool to hire to do it, but let me show you a preview of like what it could be. And we would just mock something up and we should show them like, this is the thing I want to build you. And they would look at it and they were like, wow, like that would save me so much time. That's amazing. And I'm like, okay, so that's typically what product ops would own. Like, give me the capacity to go do that, right? Like give me the ability to go do that. And that's like usually where we would get the first buy-in. So everybody I know who's had really strong success with it, it always starts at like, how do I solve the problems for the leaders? And like, what do they see as the biggest problem? So I'd have a conversation with them first about how they get the information they need to make decisions. Like, what's their biggest frustration when it comes to product management or working with product management? What do they wish they could do? And then take that and use that one project as like your proof point. And then that is usually what gets buy-in to keep going.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, the others are still thinking of questions. I wanted to follow up and maybe get a little bit more tactical on that, on like setting up this case study or like proof of concept. Like, what are maybe maybe the way that you did it at Athena Health, or some ways that you can do it in practice? Like, would you build something in like some coding tool in Power BI, or like would it be more like a show of like a mock-up just of the visuals of what it would look like? How would you get that proof of concept? Or
I started with just like, I mocked something up and I had like Sketch at the time and I showed them like, and they were like, yeah, that's like what I need. And I was like, that's what I think we can get to. And I said, I don't know how to get there yet. Like, I don't even know if this is possible in certain tools. And then they wanted to hack Jira to do it because there was no great portfolio road mapping tools at the time. It was a mess. But we were able to get slightly closer to it doing that. And then we were able to layer on some other tools when Jira started to like release them, or when Atlassian decided to actually like care about product, that pulled it back together. But when they saw that mock-up, they were like, that's the information I need. And I was like, I know that, but like this is how we get it, right? And so I think with so many of the stuff that we have today, which is really cool, it's probably faster you could probably do it already with something that you have, right? And I would look for tools that you can leverage internally first to show proof of concept. Like if you do have Power BI, there is an API from Jira that you can pull in and start to like model it. You could do that. If you have Pendo, you can start to mock up stuff in Pendo and show the information in the dashboards that you're getting, right? If you have Jira, there are plugins that you can do to put on top of it to start to get there. And it's not going to be perfect, but I would kind of show what you're aiming towards and say, like, I think I could do this better, but like, here's even where we can get a little closer. And that I think goes a really long way. I think when you are trying to introduce like a new tool, right? You're like, I want a portfolio tool or real road mapping tool or whatever. You're going to want to show them the difference between what you can get today from your systems and like what they would want, because you're going to show them what you can get. And then you're going to say, but if we have this, you could see all this type of information. And I showed them just like screenshots of dashboards from other tools. And they were like, oh my God, that's amazing, right? Like that is actually what I want. And I'm like, so we're going to have to go buy that. They're like, yes, but as long as it takes care of it, that makes sense, right? Like that's what I want off the shelf. So I think it's a lot of like demoing, trying to do what you can, but then showing them the limitations of what we currently have if you need budget to buy something else.
Cool. And follow up on that. And I think it's really cool what you mentioned, that just, I mean, when you said mock-up, I was like, okay, but that still feels like a lot of work. I would like connect data, but what you mean is just literally just a design of what it would look like to show them what they would
literally
get
drew
from
it out. It was like it was a wireframe. I was like, this is what
that's super cool.
do. And they were like, oh yeah, I want that info. And I'm like, cool. Like we can they started to build it internally. So because there was not stuff at the time. Now they've adopted like a portfolio road mapping tool that does it for you, but at the time it wasn't like a big thing.
Cool. Also, like following up on a tactical thing, I felt it as a pain point when I was working as a PM, that there's so many different tools that I haven't used before, and I don't know where to start and what to choose. And like when I see the demos, they all look amazing. Like, what's the landscape? I also know that there's a bit of like different price ranges in these tools, but what's the landscape? Or maybe like the main 10 tools that you've seen around that you think are valuable for product operations, and which ones should people look into?
And everything is changing every day. So I think it's like, it's hard to pinpoint stuff. One is you need some kind of product analytics tool, which I think we all know. Some of them are getting a little more robust than others, but I also know that people are using them for different use cases in other ways. So like I know there's a big difference between Amplitude, like some people are really gung-ho on that versus like Pendo, because I've heard Pendo sometimes is hard to customize into the cohorts, but then Pendo is also integrating with a lot of external systems to give you a better view of analytics and stuff like that. So I know they're adopting a bunch of AI things to make those recommendations and layer it on top of it. I say whenever you're looking at an analytics tool, I think it's like, where do you want to go, right? Like I would always start with all the tools is like, what information am I trying to get? And then I would go backwards and see what the tools are going to give you. And is this displayed in a way that's easy to use, easy to adopt, doesn't take like a lot of instrumentation, right? It doesn't take a ton of effort to like get going. That's how I would evaluate it. So there's also like cheaper versions of stuff like Mixpanel, right? If you're a smaller company, I would go for like a cheaper version than going super robust. And you can usually port a lot of the data over between these systems now. So I think like, oops, sorry. I think like with it, there's a bunch of different hierarchies there. So I look at a product analytics tool. You need a product road mapping tool. I have not found any one singular one that I love. And the way that I say is like anything is better than nothing. Some people do love product board. All of these tools, no matter what, and this is everybody's biggest complaint, is like it takes a lot to set up. They're all going to take a lot to set up. Like there is nothing that doesn't take a lot to set up. But once you do it, so what I recommend is like define what you want the outputs to be first. Set it up. Make sure everybody knows how to use it. Like, and then don't, like you can iterate on it slightly, but a lot of people throw it out there without a vision of where to go. And then they change it constantly, and all the product managers get mad because they're like, I don't want to relearn how to put stuff into product board, right? Like that, that's kind of where they're looking at. So that's the that's kind of what I would say. So like start from a vision of what you want to see, how you want to see it, and then set up the tool to do that. Test it with people first to make sure it's showing the right views, and then get everybody to put their stuff in, right? And also look for tools that like pull information out of the systems you already have, so that you're not constantly updating this stuff, right? Like a lot of times the work happens in other places, and these things can learn it. And if they're not good at integrating, they're not good at learning. That's like where I wouldn't say a tool would be great. I know a lot of people who get started with roadmaps in like larger companies with Atlassian. So like Jira Product Discovery is where some people are gravitating towards right now. I've seen it. It's kind of like, if that's the easiest way for you to get a road mapping tool in it, like go for it, right? Like I wouldn't go nuts trying to find the best road mapping tool. Just get started somewhere that's easy to integrate. Look at the switching costs if you did have to change, right? But make sure it's like a product tool and that you're just not hacking developer tools for it. Like some people are looking at like some of my larger clients are looking at like target process. It's not a product management tool. They're trying, but like they don't know how to do it. It's an agile tool. And it's like very velocity centric and stuff like that. Like I wouldn't go for that. So I would say like a commensurate product tool. People like ProdPad because it's kind of an all-encompassing tool, but I'd say that's great for like smaller companies that also are like, we are not precious about the way that we do things, and we need a tool that actually helps us learn how to do it. So ProdPad has like very strong opinions on how you should do product management, and they know that. That's how they advertise it, right? So if you don't want customization, like they're great because it's like off the shelf. Like I don't want to think about this. I'm cool with what you have. Versus like a Jira Product Discovery. wildly customizable, like super customizable. And they do that on purpose. So like if you're looking for direction, you'd go with like a prod pad or a tool that has like a very opinionated thing versus like flexibility. So you want to look through those two things. Some people love Airtable because of the flexibility. So they're getting into that, their AI components of it. But again, that's like highly flexible. So it's like, what avenue do you want to go that way? Other things we would look at is how to centralize information. So there are some really great user research repositories out there now, like Dovetail is one that's big in the user research space. They are heavily more towards just collecting information, which is fine, which is needed, but they allow you to dig into the data more of what your users are saying. They are like you can search like things that other people have done. You've got like a repository to go back to it, and they're layering AI on top of it so that it keeps track of trends. So as more people do user research, it'll be like, hey, here's some more problems that are surfacing that we've noticed. Pendo just acquired a company as well, Zelta.ai, that does that too, but it's not as much the research repository part. It hooks into your customer feedback mechanisms. So it integrates with like HubSpot and Gong and your customer service like Zendesk. And then it pulls out all the stuff that people are asking. And what I like about them is they relate it back to how much money those people are spending with you. So they say this problem is a big problem and it affects accounts up to $20 million type thing. So those are the kind of the landscape I would look. So I'd say you need a data tool, you need a product roadmap tool, look for a user research repository or something like that. Product analytics is a really big one. And I would start like those four, I think, are critical. And then from there's so many other things that you could possibly look at too.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for the overview. Just making sure I didn't miss the tools that you mentioned: Pendo, Amplitude, Jira Product Discovery, Mixpanel, Dovetail, Broadpath. Was there something else?
I think that
well, it's in the recording anyway. Don't worry. Cool. Ruben, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, Melissa. So it's my practical case, but I think it happens in reality. So we are not so small as a startup, but we are not so big as a huge corporation. So we are now just came from 1 lead PO to 4 or 5, but we have the need to start doing some product operations. We started by the requirements. Someone adds up and they find out we should do the requirements and templates. But what should be the next steps? Because we'll not have this role, and typically what's the areas that we should prioritize to standardize first as product operations?
Yeah, I think it's about starting with the vision of what you want to standardize first, and then figuring out like what service do we implement for it, because it could be a tool, it could be something you have to home grow, it could be like a template that you guys have to decide on. Like there's many different things that it could be there, and none of that's set in stone. You can always like change it in the future, but I would start with like what prevents us from like this mindset of like what's something like frustrating that we're all experiencing, right? That seems like we should all just be doing it the same way. And I would start from that perspective. And then I would look at like, if you're this small, I would look at what can you buy or integrate with first, or like automate, and go that route. And it's going to take somebody's time to do it. So you're going to want to say like, how do we put this in the roadmap to help us, right? Like just like developers have to go and debug their code and rewrite stuff. Like we also need to set up some time for us to just like implement some things. And when you're small, I would say like, how do we get leverage from other tools rather than try to home grow it all the time? And how do we get to like just good enough to keep us feeling like we can move faster? And then as you get like a little bit bigger, you get a little more time because it's not as much pressure. Then you can think about like, do we customize this? Is it working? The best thing you can do is like implement a retrospective every time you do that. And then go back and say, like, what did we expect for this to happen? Would we iterate on it? Is it working? Like, make sure you don't just throw stuff out there and then forget about it, because a lot of people do that. It's like, oh, we implemented that thing, but we never checked on it.
Cool, thanks. We'll actually do that, the retrospective on the process, and see what.
Yes, on the process itself. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, if you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. I wanted to also ask, and maybe going a little bit more, let's say like academic. But on your book, Product Operations, you mentioned three main areas of product operations. Can you give a quick overview of what those are, more to understand the field as a whole?
Yeah, it's so we section it into three main areas, and the whole idea is like, as an overview, is like, what do we need to set strategy and deploy strategy, right? And that's what we're looking at. So like, what are the ways that allow us to focus on our job? Because that's what we should be doing as product managers, is figuring out what we should build, and at every level of the organization, right? Like whether you're setting strategy for the long-term portfolio versus like a feature, it doesn't matter. You still need certain information to be able to do that, right? And that's why we're product managers. So the first one that we look at is data and insights. So how do we get the right data from our systems? Like we think about this more quantitatively, and I'll talk about qualitative in a minute, but like quantitatively, how do we get information out of our company to help us make decisions? So the stuff that we collect internally. So product analytics is usually where everybody starts that way. But as you move up in the organization into like a CPO role, you have to be able to get the insights from those product analytics and say, how does that actually impact my money, right? So there's this component of how do I bring the financials into that picture? And that's where the data and insights piece gets really interesting, right? So it's like about connecting all the different information you have in your systems that help paint a picture that's like, how do we get from A to B, right? How can I look at where the problems are and what the impact of this is going to be? So with that, it's about connecting those systems. So you can connect, for example, if you're like managing the costs of projects, right? You can get that information out of Jira and what people are working on, how many developers are going after it, right? And you can also connect that back to like HR tools that have salaries. So you can put like numbers on it. Or you could just say, roughly developers cost X amount of dollars and programmatically put that in there so it shows up, right? You can connect the financial stuff, right? The bookings for the customers, the win-loss type information, all the way back into how people are using stuff. And then you can start to look at predictively, people who use X, Y, and Z are more likely to churn, right? Or these people in these higher value accounts are using these types of products, right? You want to be able to do that analysis faster, right? So that's the data and insights piece. Like, how do we bring that together so that I can say, like, who are my most profitable customers and what features are they using? Who's churning and like what profile are those people and what were they using or what were they not using, right? To do that. So it comes back down to like the higher level business landscape into those product analytics. The second one is more qualitative. So it's like the customer research and the user research. So this is about how do I take both the information coming into our systems qualitatively and feed it back in, but then also streamline how we go do customer research. This isn't doing customer research for you. It's like the ops around it. So if I have to go talk to 10 customers, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to go through our entire customer base, try to find those people, email them, hope they answer me? I have to email 100 people because it's like, 10 will answer me and say, yes, I want to do that, right? That's a lot of effort. And a lot of people will skip customer research because of that. So this is looking at it as, how do we get a group of like active participants, like start curating our customers early, get them to be like bought into doing customer research, create a list of like actively engaged people who want to do this, and then open that up to product managers so they can contact them and get buy-in faster. The customers know what to expect. We have a place that aggregates all that research that we're actually doing so people can go read it and learn from it and revisit it again. So all of those ops around actually like externally getting out to customers, running betas, right? Running alphas, running experiments, like who's your captive audience to do that? So that's where the ops part of that looks at, and then getting that information back in. Then we have a lot of really good customer research already in our system. So like sales tickets, sales calls, right? There's tons of data in there. If you're using Gong, it's got them all transcribed. How do we actually get access to that as product managers so we can see like what people are buying, what people are not buying? How do we streamline that back into our systems in a good way? There's also like the sales, like the support tickets, right? How do we get that into it? So this looks at aggregating that information and figuring out how to put that into a unique way for us to look at it and get all that qualitative information. How do we do market research? Like, do we have things that allow us to go do it easily? ChatGPT has deep research now. It's very easy to use it to do that, which I love. So that type of information is really good with it. So it's like externally what's going on, so we can get pulse on that information and bring it back into our systems to make it easier for us to understand what our customers want. So again, it's not replacing customer research. It's like, how do I get a good understanding of what's going on so that I can actually make my customer research more effective too? I like to say that. So like if you can go through all that information and say, you know, these types of customers have said this, these types of customers said that, I looked at what's coming in. Now I want to go talk to 10 of them and I have them lined up over here. I can do that now in 2 weeks instead of like 3 months, right? With all that effort. So that's really what that's looking at. The last one is governance and processes. That's about just always like Marty Kagan's favorite thing. But that's really about what do we standardize that helps us flow correctly, right? How do we keep a pulse on our strategy too and understand that like when we have to change, right? Like how are we revisiting it? I've seen a lot of companies like invite the entire company to a roadmap review. Do you have to do that? Right? Like our cadences actually set up well for us to make decisions, or are we just in a bunch of status update meetings where we're not making decisions, right? Like that's one component of it. The other component is like, how do we work well together? Like there are certain things, like a roadmap item should be standardized. Like this is the inputs, this is what everybody has to write, this is the scope of it, and we call it this. You set that once, and then everybody can actually reconcile what they're building versus what other people are building. I don't think of this piece as like, what are we doing on a day-to-day basis within our teams to just get work done? I don't really care how anybody runs that as long as it's effective, whether you Scrum, Kanban, I don't really, it doesn't matter to me. This is more about like across the product management team, how do we communicate effectively, but also how do we communicate effectively outside of it? So sales can understand the information that we're putting out. When we do a go-to-market launch, right? When we do launch planning, everybody in the organization knows what goes into launch planning. So we know when to bring in marketing. We know when to bring in sales. They know what's required of them. There's templates for them to like think about how we do this stuff. We have stuff we fill out and we can hand over. Like those types of things are what we look to standardize because it makes us all work more efficiently together. And we're not recreating new processes or teaching people new things off the side of our desk. So that's like the point of what the governance and process part is. And tools are included in there too.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. What I really like about this framing of having these 3 clear buckets, let's say, is that it becomes also valuable for individual PMs, even if they are not in a big enough organization that has a dedicated product ops function, but understanding what goes into product ops, it also makes sense on a smaller scale. You can think about these things, and on the scale of a small startup, what are the things that you can do to optimize these things? Because what you just mentioned of the user research, like how do you go about interviews, of how you collect these insights, how you make them visible and so on, it's usually a big pain point for even for small startups. And if you have this clarity, okay, this is something that I can build a process for and make it more effective, it's also valuable even if you don't have this dedicated product ops function. Yeah, and I have this question here, I forgot, sorry, Norma, if you're listening. Yeah, it's also not the best time for this session for people here in Portugal and Spain because it's time to getting out of work and picking up kids. So thank you for joining at this time. But yeah, so Norma said, asked, based on your experience, do you usually find resistance from the teams? What are your advice to gain adoption? So besides the leadership, yeah.
It's the teams are usually happy to use it if you're getting their buy-in early. So it's just like you have to get buy-in, right? So I would never implement something for the teams without going to a bunch of them and be like, does this make sense? And we did that at Athena Health. And when we taught everybody like, hey, this is the format that we're putting roadmap items in, here's the scope, we had no resistance on it. People were like, okay, great. I've been trying to figure out what I should write in there and I have no idea. So like this helps me because it takes the burden off of me trying to figure out what template you want things in. So we almost always get pretty good buy-in from teams to do this. So I haven't experienced like a ton of resistance, but where you will experience resistance is if you keep changing everything over and over and over again. And that always happens. So like people usually get frustrated when you're like, hey, this is how you write a roadmap thing. nope, actually that didn't work. I want you to do this whole format for the roadmap review now. Actually, that's not the right information. I want you to change it to this. So now they're recreating the wheel. They go and they spend so much time doing it, getting ready to present it, and then you change it on them, and then you change it on them, and then that's where people get upset. So it's like, and usually it's because we're not really thinking about it from like a what do we want to achieve with this standpoint, and then going back and work for and making sure it's the right template before we launch it. So just like you would with a product, right? You have to test it a little bit before you say, hey, let's roll this out everywhere.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's a very good point. So don't frustrate your colleagues. Don't get them mad at you.
Yeah.
Cool. There's a question here from Ruben. Ruben, I'm not sure if I understand. Not sure if you're on commute and can speak now. If you could ask the question. If not, I'll just read what you have and. Oh yeah.
Yes, of course. Because data analysts or business analysts, they are not PMs, but we need to interact with them. So sometimes we need to let them know what kind of data we need or how to set up the KPIs. But maybe they have other way of working. So it's very edge or a frontier, difficult to standardize.
Typically, like product ops job is to go to the data analyst too and these other teams and then build that working relationship. So a lot of it is saying, hey, let me go to the data analyst and be like, we really need this type of information over in product management, but instead of having 50 people come to you and ask you for different requirements, like I'm going to go make sure that we're solving the biggest problems for them, and then I'll work with you so that you can help instrument it. And I'd love to like self-serve this so that people are not bothering you all the time, right? Like that's our goal. So what can you do to help me set that up so it's less pressure on you? And then I'm responsible for making sure that all of this stuff kind of comes together and we have a good vision for it. So we're not just going crazy here all the time. So that's the like working relationship that you build with them. And then you can scope out what do we need from them by you go talk to all the product managers, right? You figure out what they need from them. You find the commonalities and you scope it out and give it to the data analysts. And they usually love that because they're like, okay, cool. I don't have all these different requests coming in. I have one person I know to work with. I know, they're going in and trying to figure out what's going on. So I can just work off this stuff. And then they'll usually prioritize it faster there too. And you communicate the impact it'll have on the rest of the team too.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right. Thank you so much for sharing and for the question. So we just have 3-4 minutes left. So if there's any last minute question, we could still take one more. Otherwise, we can also wrap up and give you all back and Melissa 4 minutes to have a bio break if you have a next meeting. Yeah, Emil, take the stage for the last question of today.
Yeah, hi Melissa, and thanks for all the great insights you're sharing with us. One quick question. From what I've seen on LinkedIn on your post, I'm sure you're not a big fan of SAFe framework. Nevertheless, I'm quite curious what would you recommend in order to speed up the communication or remove friction between this line of PO, PM, and business owner?
He cut out for you
We
too.
lost you. Yeah. Emil, can you hear us? We lost you.
Sound cut out.
We can't hear you. Can you hear us? It seems like he also can't hear us.
I think he's looking.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Emil?
Oh.
Yeah.
I think his headphones cut out.
Yeah. Nope, still not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
now yes.
Okay, I'm not sure where did I cut out?
You said, how do we streamline the communication between POs, PMs, and then business owners?
Yeah, because this is what happens in my experience now, as I've changed job like 2 weeks ago, and I see a lot of delay in communication. The answers come after like 2 days from the PM, and after 2 days, the business owner comes and says, "Okay, the PM is not right. We need to do it differently." And yeah, this is like a friction, and it's like a miscommunication. What would you recommend in such cases? How do you recommend to proceed?
I think so. SAFe is generally awful at product management processes. Like they just don't have them, and that's why you have disconnect between a PO, PM, and business owner, right? Like it's not well thought out that these people have to work together, and there's a strategy, and then SAFe doesn't actually dictate what that strategy should be. So like the best thing that you can do is when you're kicking stuff off is to get those three people in a room and be like, what are we trying to achieve here? What are the nuances around it? What are the outcomes? Like I would bring all three people together to like kick off the project or the work that you're going to be doing, like the feature, whatever it is, understand the problem deeply there. And then from there, now you can be like, okay, are we aligned on this stuff? Then you're going to want to go into the work. What's usually happening there is that the business owner is not setting a strategy, or they're setting a strategy that's not communicated down to the PM. The PM's going out doing customer research, not communicating it back up to the business owner, and then everybody's just dictating stuff to the POs and not like telling them the context behind it. So when it gets built, it's not what people wanted, and it's almost always what's happening here because the PMs think they own all the customer part of it. The business owners are like, I own all the business part of it, but ideally you need everybody to own a little bit of all of that, just at different levels. And usually the business owners are not thinking about how all this stuff comes together. The PMs are just looking at the customer insight stuff, and then you turn into like a waterfall approach where you're just like pulling in requests and then feeding it down to the POs.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for the question, and thank you for sharing. Getting everyone on the same room is always a good option. Get that alignment before going into the confusion. Yeah, so okay, there's still a question, but we're right on time. Let's see if we can still squeeze that in. Do you have a strict, do you need to leave now, Melissa? Or can we answer still this question?
Real question.
Okay.
Ask Marina.
So
I think
let's get this. Yeah, go ahead.
the idea here is if you want to transition from a small startup to say like you can work at a larger organization, what a lot of those larger international organizations need is like a codified product management process, and you can roll that out right now at a smaller startup. You can implement a lot of those templates. You can train a lot of people and figure out like what your PDLC should be. And then I would say like show how you've built products that scale like internally. So, right, like if you are implementing like a new roadmap tool or whatever, talk about the impact it had to bring everybody together, even if it was small. If you were looking at the data pieces, talk about how you streamline that. Like that is what everybody's looking for, is like more color on how to do product management at scale in those organizations. And it's like, if you can solve those problems they're looking for, they want to bring the product management experience in there. So you can still build the services at a small company and be like, I set it up to scale when we kept going. So we had no problem onboarding new people. That's how I would position it.
All right, awesome. I hope that was useful, Marina. And yeah, let's wrap up. We're right on time. So thank you all very much for joining. Even if you were picking up your kids from school, there were a lot of kids on commutes during the call. And yeah, thank you so much, Melissa, for joining and for sharing all those insights. For everyone, if you're not yet, make sure to also subscribe to Melissa's podcast. And she also writes a lot of stuff about product management. So yeah, make sure to follow if you're not following yet, and check out the product operations book if that's interesting, if you want to dive deeper. So yeah, thank you all, and thank you, Melissa, for the time. See you soon, all of you, next week, and Melissa also next week in the Product Weekend in New York.
Yes.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you.
For your time. Bye bye.